the sensation of the nation, the #1 creation, the golem of immersion, your main man returns to you, my barbarian horde, today to give you the video you have been clamoring about for some time. Non-Vancian clerics in your Dungeons & Dragons game, in your AD&D first, in your AD&D second, in your 3.0, 3.5, or Pathfinder experience. That's right, each and every one of these games can benefit from the extraction of the Vancian style of magic. This will not apply to 4th edition games because they do not have Vancian style of magic in 4th edition. Not to say their magic system is good, just to say we cannot address it right here and right now. So, let's examine in AD&D what we have here. Now, for those of you out there, before you ask for a video on Wizards, I've already done one. Pulling Vancian magic out of Dungeons & Dragons Wizards, something like that. Also watch Dungeons & Dragons Reimagined. What if we did this? Watch those 2 videos. We're going to talk about sorcerers. We're going to talk about all those things. Yes, I will do a video coming up on sorcerers, your main man style, so that you can actually play these characters and make them pop. That's what I'm about, making these characters better than they are going to be presented to you by the game design rules you have. Consider this an OGL submission from the main man, and my mission is immersion, and immersion to pull you into. Now, get ready to fall in the deep end of RPG. Let's knock out the mechanics. First of all, we're going to talk about the priest class. Alright, so in AD&D you had just bludgeoning weapons, which was done completely for mechanical reasons. Oh, well, I don't know, we don't use these bludgeoning weapons because we made all their damage suck, so let's just give them to priest, because bludgeoning is good damage, right? I don't know about you, but I would much rather get hit by a sword than a warhammer. That's right, the horrifying death a warhammer is going to give you versus maybe the quick, clean, smooth death of a sword. I'm taking that sword each day of the week. A warhammer is not a nice thing to hit someone with. It is terrifying. Hell, just take a normal hammer. Look at any movie scene where the psycho monster like Jason or something beats someone to death with a hammer. You're like, oh, why didn't I get that machete? You want that machete all day long versus a hammer. Hammer, horrifying, horrifying. So there's nothing nice or kind about bludgeoning damage. In fact, quite honestly, I think it's the other way around entirely. The ideas, every idea that's ever been put in front of me for the bludgeoning damage is horrible. You might have one as well. Maybe you have a good one, but your idea's probably bad too. Let's just be real about it for a minute. So, and they also could wear any kind of armor, which again makes no sense. They were generic. It was like, here's a generic template, add a god here. Don't worry about your god very much. You just have these spells and you can use a warhammer. No! You have to worry about the god. That has all that's important. Why would the goddess of summer days and meadows and grasshoppers give you the same armor restrictions, the same weaponry, the same spells as the god of frost and death and steel, or the god of fire and righteousness and beatings? Why would they all give you the same thing? They wouldn't, they couldn't, they shouldn't, and they won't. Certainly not in my game, and hopefully not in yours. Watch my campaign world builder video series on my channel. Best campaign world video building series you will find anywhere, and you will build your world campaign style. That's right, that's kind of like family style, but with a whole campaign. Now, when you look at that, that's going to give you a lot of ways to do that. We start right off with gods, so you need to design the clergy of those gods. Alright, so let's break it down in categories. Weapons should vary completely by divinity. Your god or goddess might not want you to have any weapons at all. Might just want you to have like a lasso or a net or something like that. We might go all the way up to battle axes. You have to keep the blood of your enemies on them at all times. Only the battle axe. It's only going to be chopping heads off. Maybe they want you to use a particular weapon because it's styled after them, a follower of Thor with a warhammer or something. Although I certainly think that you should give them more than just one weapon. It's like, oh yeah, I'll follow Thor, but I'm actually going to use this sword over here because Thor just wants me to beat you down. He doesn't care if I use the same hammer as he does. And I think game designers went a little overboard on that. Oh, you're a follower of Odin, you have to use a spear. Oh, you're a follower of Thor, you got to use that. No. The god just wants you to deliver a beating. If the god of giving beatings, what they really want is for you to give a beating. That's all they care about. So we got to make weapons different. We got to do the same thing for armor, make it make sense. You can even bring in sort of ceremonial dress style and bring that in with the armor as well. I give, and then we go for spells. Spells should not be Cleric gets all the spells. Look at Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. They hit Clerics the best of any of these editions we're talking about because they had Specialty Priests. And the Specialty Priest had spheres of magic. They had special abilities. They had armor and they had weapons. And they outside of doing Vancian magic, which we know here, if you watch my videos, I'm not a fan of Vancian magic. I will not play another character that uses Vancian magic. I won't do it. I can't do it. I shouldn't do it, nor should you. So, and I know there's some of you aberrants out there that enjoy Vancian magic. I don't know why, but you seem to like it. Still, I think hands down, Vancian magic goes along with armor class and hit points of just being Dungeons & Dragons failures. It's just a poorly designed mechanic. The big reason it's a poorly designed mechanic is you clearly interface with it mechanically in character. You should never interface mechanically with anything in character. Think about that. It creates a paradox. You're like, oh, well, I'm playing a game. And as soon as the mechanics enforce upon you that you are playing a game, they have failed. Completely and utterly and miserably. Completely. The failure of mechanics is best represented in, do they make you all of a sudden realize you are certainly playing a game? They prevent immersion. When you sit down and go, oh, well, per level after 15 minutes of prayer, and no, you're missing the whole point. And they should be different. We should be praying. We should be studying. We should be learning our theology. Absolutely, as a priest. Not saying that at all. Should there be regimented prayer times, all these things? Absolutely. Not a problem with any of that. But the way that it's implemented here is just very, very poor. So, when we're experiencing the cleric, what do we want to do? I like to have, let's start with this. Again, you got your weapons, you get different weapons, different armor, and you want to give the character, let's start with 3 different special abilities. Now, otherwise the character might be a little on the weak side, so maybe you give them 4 special abilities. Maybe you want to make one of the special abilities incredibly powerful, so just give them 1. Maybe you want to, you made a bunch of weaker ones in, maybe you give them 9. It's not that you have to give them 3. 3 is a good starting point because it's a multiple number, and it can be added to or subtracted from pretty easily. And you just keep a list on the characters. Oh, your cleric can always detect magic. Whenever magic's around, he knows there's magic. Oh, your cleric gets a +1 bonus when there's a full moon in the sky to all his rolls. Oh, your cleric, when he sees his own blood pouring out of his head, he's going to get a +1 bonus to damage. Your cleric is going to get a -1 penalty whenever they smell honeysuckles on the breeze. And you can bring those things in, and you can bring loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of different things. Those are just right off the top of the head examples. Some of them are a little more serious, some of them a little more silly, and they should kind of give you an example because you can use, serious and silly in those examples, especially when it's specific. And they should be specific because they are, after all, the followers of a god. So think about that when you're putting them together. Now, these are... let's look at spheres. So spheres in AD&D 2nd edition. We have like all and astral and charm and war and healing and sun. There's a bunch of them. But it limited the number of spells you could cast. You couldn't just cast every spell out there. After all, we're ripping Vancian magic out by the roots, and we are bringing in a spontaneous magic casting system. No, I'm not going to use Unearthed Arcana spontaneous casting rules. They were terrible in that book. Terrible presentation of a class. No, absolutely not. What we're going to use, and we're going to put forth together these rules, and we're going to put a new class out there. My OGO submission for you. Feel free to write the rules down. Feel free to use them in however you like. No, I didn't write them down. No, I'm not going to sit down and write them down and send them to you. I'm not going to do that. You can write them down. Just listen to the video. Let's do it multiple times. Why not? So, you have a 1st level spell, you're going to give you 1 spell slot. 2nd level spell, 2 spell slots. 4th level spell, 4 spell slots. Still, when you're a 5th level caster, you can only cast 3rd level spells. And you can spend more points into your spells, perhaps to do some little interesting different things. You're going to have to write out your verbal components, write out your somatic components, so you have these things done differently. You can just make them nice and plain and simple in English. You can make them in Latin. You could make them in fantasy language like Elven or Dragon, which could be nonsense, or you could look things up online. Whatever you want to do to add flavor and flair to your character, do it. Make it interesting. Every one of your spells might be a poem. Every single one of your spells, you can get up and do dramatic hand gestures and so forth, but the material components, when you use them, If you're using your baseline material components, you the game master can go with it and let you do whatever you want there. But when you have something maybe weaker or maybe more powerful for your material component, all of a sudden, ooh, you could do something kind of neat here. You know, if what you need is like grave dirt and you have the ashes of a vampire instead, ooh, I'm going to let you rock and roll with that, and we're going to go into my mind and my creativity, and I'm going to spin off whatever dark fascination avails itself to my nugget, and we're going to put you in the middle of that maelstrom. So something different's going to happen. We're going to add to it. You add some more spell points in there. Something different's going to happen. We're going to add to it. We're going to use different stuff. And I like that. I think that could really make the class seem far more real. After all, and also when you run out, I think spell points just like hit points. Like when you start running out, you get more and more tired, and when you're completely done, you can probably barely even move. Like you're so exhausted. You know, it's just like, you know, having sex, being done, and just, you know, you've been going at it, you're tired. You know, it's the same thing. You know, you've expended something powerful from yourself, and then you're going to be like, oh, you know, you're not just like, I have no spells left, I'm just straight. You're like, oh, I'm all jacked up. You know, give the characters some penalties to their rolls when they're out. If you're using a system that has 0th level spells, I will let you cast all your 0th level spells spontaneously as many times as you want, not using any points. But when you run out of spell points altogether, if you have none left, you can't use those spells at all either. So then, you know, you start having to think about how you want to use those. But what you want to basically do is divide down. Instead of being able to cast all the spells, first of all, you can only cast a certain number. In AD&D is very easy because you can just go through spheres. You can kind of do that with domains and 3-point up, but domains don't really cover everything, so you might want to add extra spells to yes, no, with those other spells, what have you. Now, you can get into some really interesting things. Say you are a follower of Ogma, and your group kills a cleric of Bane, and you take that black Bible of Bane, that hand of tyranny, that iron gauntleted tome, and you open it up, and you go through it, and you read it, and you learn its secrets. And remember, it's not just a list of spells in here. Yes, it should be, to a degree, but they're contained inside the doctrine. You know, it's just like you're reading those holy words. You know, okay. Oh, but here, and you kind of translate it. It should be Banish, but you're sort of translating it out, almost like taking, you know, a Christian learning things from a Jew. You know, learning from their holy scriptures, or from a Muslim. You know, so you're going all over the place. And you're learning these things. If you're bringing them back, you're retranslating them out, you're fitting them in with your own ethos, your own dogma, your own God. Your God grants you that spell. Let's say it's bless, and you don't have bless, and you're learning it. You pull it out, and you can use that bless spell now because you've learned it. And you have to roll to learn them, just like a wizard does. Remember, on a roll of a 1, you can never learn that spell. That's something that can really help heighten the game. I mean, you might like to play down here. You know, if you're one of those guys who likes to play video games with unlimited lives and cheat codes, don't use the 1. If you like to play and really get your game on, but go for it, man. I'll tell you, it will make the game more fun. When you have that chance of losing, all of a sudden, you know, it makes that winning all the more successful. And I often will give somebody a bonus if they roll a natural 20 to keep it balanced out. Like, oh yeah, you could use that. Well, maybe it costs you a spell point less. Maybe you don't have to use components for that spell. Maybe X, Y, or Z, whatever comes to my mind, we're going to give you some little bonus. Maybe it does an extra point of damage for you. You know, you've added to it. Okay? Maybe you make it just slightly more flexible for them, or whatever. Now, you want to allow the players to customize their spells from material components. You want to allow them to bring, if they don't want to use the same material components right off the bat for a spell, like, just let them do what they want. Like, let them make it cool for them so that it's, you know, entertaining. I love material components in the game. And they can add a great deal of flavor when your players are like, oh, are there any farms around here? Like, farm? We want a farm. Well, I'm looking for some cows to get their fur or their dung, or I want to find mushrooms that are growing under cow patties. You know, and you're like, oh, you know, because they're thinking on it. This is a lot easier to do when you have less spells. When you have a billion spells, very hard to keep track of. When you have less, it's easier. Less is almost always more in D&D. Remember, we're only going to go with certain schools, and you don't get all those spells. At first level, you're not starting off with every sphere you have or every domain you have of those spells. I might give you 5. It's like, here, your first level cleric, here's your 5 spells, and you get all these 0-level spells too. And you got to learn. Now, you can go through the orthodox channels of going to your church and having the priest teach you and aid you and help you. You might be able to conjure up spirits of your divinity and have these lesser spirits advise you, teach you, and give you aid in progressing. I mean, I'm kind of taking some Within Ring of Fire stuff right now, but progressing and learning and taking that magical aspect and being able to run with it, as opposed to simply learning on yourself or going to studies and so forth. But when you're taking that Black Bible, the Follower of Bane, the Priest of Ogmore, and going through it, you have that temptation storyline built in. And what if you put spells in there that they just can't, their God won't sanction, or God won't grant? Spells are not illegal. And it's a cool one. It's when you know the player wants, and you can just start hooking them and pulling them, and they resist, and they pull them, and you're running a temptation storyline built right into the Black Bible. It's not magic, it's not special, there's nothing odd about it. It's just that temptation of power, that spell that they would love to have, that they can't have, and now they got to think, and maybe they get pulled and pulled and pulled, and maybe, just maybe, Bane lets them have a little satisfaction. So it could be very interesting. I would also allow them to be able to cast with scrolls, but with the scrolls at the same time, you might have that pure serious scroll. Scrolls for clerics can so often be throwaways, it makes me sick. But just like a wizard, when you got that scroll of fireball, you're like, oh, I can learn this fireball later. I'm going to hold on to this. I'm not going to use it now. Using it now would be make things easier, but you hold on to it and you gamble. And that's great. That's cool when it means enough that you have to go, oh, I might never get fireball again. I got to keep this fireball. Now, when you have that cure serious or that scroll of heal or something, you're like, I'll heal you. I'll get it later, no problem. But now when you know you have to earn it, you're like, oh, no, I don't have a scroll of healing. And that itself could be temptation. Be like, your God, you could lower your own piety. Like, your God's like, well, wait a minute. You're not just going to help people. You're the God of healing. You have to use that to help people. No, I had to get this later, because later then I could heal more people. And see, you start getting the corruption in your own mind, that greed is spinning off, and that lust for power, it plays up, and it gives you more stuff to run with. Trust me, I really get into the cleric's mindset and the cleric's head, and I really enjoy that aspect in the game. And the more you give them to work with, the more it'll run. If you've only played clerics like out here, you're not going to get everything I'm saying. But go inside here and play them and run with these things I'm telling you. Do it a few times, not just once. Do it a few times. You're going to get it. It's going to be more enjoyable. It is going to be more enjoyable. I guarantee you that right now. So you are going to have that pool of spell points. You're going to have a couple of special abilities, and you're going to have different weapons and armor. Your god is going to be different. And you are going to, and the special abilities can be anything you want, anything you want, or in terms of anything the game master wants to give you. It could be anything from being better with your weapons to being really good at dancing, or maybe you become more attractive. Maybe you get bonuses when you can smell honeysuckles, or the full moon, whatever it is. These can really make the character much more interesting and much more authentically seeming like the cleric. So you can learn those spells from capture spell books, from consulting with the elders of your faith, from spirits of your god, from scrolls, from maybe things carved in plates of gold or on an ancient catacombs of lost lore. And you're down there, you're digging, and you find those ancient spells. You're like, oh, well, this spell is from my ancient sun god, and now there's my sun gods now, but I can learn this and bring it back. And then all of a sudden, you can also start heresies. You can intentionally begin heresies just with these spells. There's so much you can interject. We don't just go, oh, God, just give you everything. Just don't worry about that. See, you've given them everything, but nothing. When you give them a little, but every part tells a story. Every part means something. Every part adds more. You've given them story. You're like ripping yourself off by taking tools out of your box. You want to have the tools and give the tools out. And also, players love to get stuff. Love it. Players don't love the stuff they have. They're like kids. They love to get stuff. It's like, and here's stuff. You're like, oh, stuff. They don't care about 5,000 gold coins, but you just gave them like 3. They're like, oh, 3 gold coins. I mean, maybe people don't get jazzed up about gold coins, but when you get something, it means something to you. You see what I'm saying? It's just like Monty Hall. When you give them enormous amounts of treasure, what difference does it make? But when you give them just a tiny bit, an enormous amount of treasure, all the spells at first level, all the spells at second, third, that's enormous. But when you give them just a little, all of a sudden it means a tremendous deal. All of a sudden they're interested. They're following them. Plus, you can take 2 spells and then learn them. You can't learn all the spells in one level and all the spells, and it's too much. You see? But when they start learning them, plus they get those moments when they can use that spell in a cool fashion. Nothing sucks more than having a power, and then you could use it in terms of you have the spell slots, but you didn't take it. And it's like, you know, particularly when it's one you wouldn't normally take. Like, that one kind of sucks. I won't ever use it, but this one time I might be able to use it, and now you just jack yourself. And like, I'm not gonna have fun if I get jacked like that. I'm gonna be like, oh, that was butt. I could have done that. And I will tell you this: as a writer, you wouldn't write a character like that. Writers don't write like that. Writers don't write like that. You know, you write yourself into using the cool stuff. Why would you make a D&D character that was less cool? You want to optimize their cool factor, not minimize it. So the whole system doesn't work at all. It's clearly game mechanical. If you limit the number of spells they can actually learn, you don't have to number slotted out or so forth, but there's some things they won't be able to learn ever. God might not ever allow you to raise dead, ever. There might be loads of spells they don't allow you to learn, but there's a few that they do. You understand? So you can learn those spells. You can go into the next level and learn spells like those. And, you know, you could use your scrolls or keep your scrolls back, and you can spontaneously cast whatever you need. And you're going to be feeling and seeming a lot more like the clerics of your god. That's how your main man does clerics. Anyone out there that ever ends up playing a D&D game I have, clerics will be just like this. This is how we do them. It works well. It works excellent. They feel real. And again, you are out there studying. You're following the scriptures. You're following the commandments. You're just not going about it the same way as the rigid way the game does. You know, you give you more flexibility so you can flesh that out and you can bring it across. And if they're playing it well, reward them. If they're doing a lax job, penalize them. Like, oh, your god decided not to invest anymore, and you can only cast first and second level spells. You aren't doing enough. And you force them to do things. Because why would a god allow them? I mean, you can still getting Hittites, but they're not going to keep giving you. They only have so much power. They're not going to keep investing their power in you. If you're not making sacrifices, keeping holy days, if you're not trying to convert people or make it, you know, the appropriate austerities for them, you know, they're not going to invest in you. So those are all things that you can really tie up into a nice bundle to present a hell of a character, and that's really what you want to do when you put your cleric together. So this has been your main man talking about how to rip that Vancian root right out of the cleric system. Let me know what you think below.